NFL fans are extremely passionate, just like most people who watch sports. They love the sport and follow specific teams. They want them to win so badly and they put their all into supporting them during games. Sometimes they go a little too far though, but what has happened to show this? Well, stay tuned because today we're going to discuss times fans went too far during NFL games. To start off this video, a Guinness World Record. Cheering in a stadium for an NFL team during some of the most heated moments in the sport is very normal. The stadium is filled without thousands, and they just scream at the top of their lungs in order to cheer on or even boo certain people and teams. NFL fans are so passionate that they are said to have some of the loudest cheers in sporting history. So Guinness World Records tried their hand at seeing what their top decibel actually is. In late 2013, we saw Philip Robertson, a Guinness World Records adjunctor, take a stab at trying to find the loudest crowd roar at a sports stadium. This took place in Seattle as the power of the Seahawks fans was set to be the loudest in sporting history. The group was dubbed the 12th Man, and their cheers came to an insane 134.6 decibels, which is twice as loud as the 130 decibel pain threshold. This is also louder than a fighter jet launching from an aircraft carrier. This roar will go down in the history books and just shows how passionate these fans can get. Whilst this isn't inherently a bad thing, it could affect others in the stadium or even the players. It's not the worst thing on this list, but it's definitely one of the coolest, if not awful, things fans can pull off. What exactly does a crazy loud crowd do to NFL teams? Beyond raw noise, what if a crowd is booing, heckling, or even silent? Why are they cheering, booing, heckling, or silent anyway? Next, why do fans cheer so much? Another thing to cover, as it's one of the most powerful things that fans can do to go too far during an NFL match, is why do these fans cheer so much? So many researchers have looked into this matter, as it's really important when understanding the psychology of us as humans. If cheering is such a huge part of the NFL and the fan base, why exactly do we do it? Dr. Daniel Wan has been looking into this for many years, and back in 2013 he stated, not only do fans cheer and yell, and not only do they do that in an incredibly loud manner at Arrowhead Stadium, a Seahawks game, in playoff games, they also believe that cheering has a direct impact on the game. These fans seem like they have two jobs during a match. They're set to disrupt the visiting team and support their own home team. There isn't one specific example of this sort of disruption because it happens at basically every NFL game. The home crowd are constantly verbally attacking the other team in order to shut the crowd and the NFL players down. Even though the vast majority of the time these screams and shouts become inaudible, it's hard to avoid the fact that they can shout some obscene things at the other players and the other fans. It's actually a really big problem when two opposing fan bases confront one another during an NFL game. Things get really heated because both sides are very passionate about the team that they support. It's one of the worst things in the NFL world, especially when it comes to attacking specific players. Some groups and fan bases racially attack certain players all the time, and it's just horrible. And now, does the crowd actually affect the game? We all now know that the crowds during basically any NFL game can become insanely loud, and as loud as a jet plane taking off in certain circumstances. Going to be a pretty normal thing at this point, and even stadiums are taking this into account when sorting out seating and even building new ones. They don't want sound to stay in the arena, they want ways to numb out the sound if possible. But can these sounds actually affect the game these fans are watching? Well, it actually can and has been for many years now. Ever since the NFL has become so much and that their fans have become so loud, there have been a problem with these sounds directly interfering with the game. When fans let their voices go and they roar at the top of their lungs, it actually affects the players on the field. It may seem loud being sat in the crowd, but it's also very loud being in the pitch itself. These players sometimes cannot hear team callouts or what their teammates are saying during a huddle up. Really hard to actually be tactical during a matchup when you literally can't hear your team making specific calls at any point. During 1989, the NFL actually adopted rules to control crowd noise. Teams could have in-game penalties if the crowd interfered with the opponent's offense, and also boards telling the crowd to be louder were also banned. This was eventually written out of the rules, however, as technology had advanced, so players could use their ear headsets to hear one another. This allowed fans to be as crazy as they wanted in terms of vocal actions. This was added during 1994 and really brought these games back to their glory days once again. Next up, an example of this defining sound in the Lion's Den. So what was a defining event in the history of the NFL that really shows off how powerful a crowd can be when it comes to cheering or even booing at the players on the field. Well, for that, we have the 2011 Detroit Lions game against the Chicago Bears. This match was set to be amazing, with such a lively crowd coming in to make things even better. This was the first time in 9 years that the Detroit Lions had hosted a Monday Night Football, and it was safe to say that the fans were very excited to cheer on or boo the teams. As we now know, things didn't go very well, and this crowd was way louder than expected. This crowd was so deafening that the visiting Chicago Bears committed around 9 false starts because they just couldn't hear one another. Because of the 24-13 win, head coach Jim Schwartz gave Lions fans the game ball, which is now displayed in a case in the Ford Field concourse. This night was actually insane and shows just how powerful the fans' voices in a stadium can actually be. They basically made the Chicago Bears lose the match because of their overall loudness. Hard to avoid the fact that the fans can have so much effect on a game in the NFL. And finally, what did the players do to cope with the pressures of the noise? To end off this video, we're going to go over what the players do to cope with the pressure on the field. So what do they do? Well, each player has their own response to the crowd during an NFL game. Whether it's a home game or an away game, friendly or unfriendly, Dr. Daniel Wan stated it's a function of that athlete's personality and how they respond to pressure situations. Some athletes just seem to have the ability to rise to the occasion in these anxious moments. What the research suggests is if it's a very difficult task, something the athlete's going to fail at more often than succeed, the distraction of the crowd's going to inhibit their performance. If it's something they're good at, if they're likely to get it right, then the crowd should support their performance and make them better. If you look at it that way, Dr. Wan puts it, it looks like the majority of the time the crowd will actually make a player make smarter and better decisions that could lead to a better match for them. The failure, of course, expected by the crowd, but it doesn't affect most players too much. Sadly, there isn't much an NFL player can do to avoid the insanely loud screams of the crowd, other than develop their own confidence and tackle things on their own. At the end of the day, a confident player isn't going to be hurt by the fans attacking them. If they are confident in their own ability and their own skill, they should be completely fine when it comes to taking some verbal abuse from the crowd. Even for the best of players, it's not an easy skill to master, but it's worthwhile to learn. And that's the end of the video.